Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded here at WBNY in their studios here at Buffalo State University, Buffalo's original alternative radio station, WBNY, at 91.3 FM. We are so grateful to be here now and part of WBNY. And also a little shout out, I want to mention Greg Harvey. We thank you, Greg, for all that you do here at WBNY, and also, if I can say, for the Buffalo Bills Network.
That's
and
right.
a very, very, very pleasing game that happened yesterday to give people a real charge.
A happy Monday.
Yes, a happy Monday. We have happy Monday. And I also thank our producer, our other producer, Richard Wicca of Think Twice Radio. That's Think Twice Radio in the home of the future. Richard Wicca also will actually put this show up on our YouTube so that it will be permanently available. But anyway, so we thank Buff State and WBNY, of course, and Think Twice Radio. And when I think of thankfulness, I think of our indigenous friends and indeed, all Black, indigenous, and people of color who, and really so many people who realize that no matter what kind of oppression or injustice or difficulties that people are dealing with, that we have so much to be thankful for, and that thankfulness is so important. So in spite of the fact that this land that we're on, this Haudenosaunee land, it's an Ondawaka or Seneca land that was taken through trickery and violence, in spite of all of that, and then the centuries of violence that they've undergone and injustice, they are still start every gathering with thankfulness, with a Ganonyo, which they thank everybody who made the gathering possible. Then they thank Mother Earth for giving us everything that we need for a good life here, for everything that we need for our existence, and the living waters that without which there is no life. Mini Wachoni, water is life. For all of the plants, the indigenous plants, the medicinal and nutritional plants, and what to speak of the trees that are so vital and wonderful for us, and all of the animals of every kind, swimming, crawling, four-legged and flying creatures, and all of the different phenomena in this world, and the sky world, the brother, sun, grandmother, moon, and the whole of the sky world, and the creator, and the love that animates it all. And then they would say Nyahweh, and the people say Nyo. So Nyahweh.
Nyo.
Thank you. So once again, we have a very important topic for this show. It's been getting off and on, been getting some attention, but it's been such a problem for so long, and the time is now to make those changes, and there are people who've been working very, very hard on that. I'm talking about Restoring Humboldt Parkway, and we have our two guests here have been doing just phenomenal work on that topic, and so I want to just introduce Brad Wales, who is a professor, clinical assistant professor at UB. University of Buffalo in the School of Architecture and Planning, and done so much on this topic. Brad, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having us.
Oh, we're so glad. We're so glad to get a show done. I know you have your own radio show now, but we want to get it out as much as we can because the time is now. And Sherrill. So, Sherry, it's good to have you on. I know you do so much, both on this topic and lots of others with your Covington Associates Consulting and with the whole Eastside Parkways Coalition and now the Eastside
Collaborative Partnership.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Vicki, for having us both.
Oh, we appreciate you so much. So, so without further ado, we'll just get into, before we get into the topic, we'll do what we usually do, which is what are the topics? So our topic is restoring Humboldt Parkway. So when you think of restoring Humboldt Parkway, what are the values that you think of? The values that are important in this effort, in this discussion. Brad?
It's just the health of the people. It's, happiness, calmness, being able to share space with your friends that's not a highway, that's like Bidwell Parkway. I would like to mention also that when you talk about thankfulness, we should be so thankful right now that we have a tremendous opportunity to fully restore Humboldt Parkway right now with this process. Absolutely.
So thank you for both of those, both the health of people, and the health and joy of people, and then this wonderful opportunity and the thankfulness for that. Those are great values. Thank you, Brad. And Sherry?
Like Brad said, Vicki, I think for me it is the value that's overarching everything that has to do with the Kensington Expressway question is life and the quality of it.
Right.
I know that the sentiment that Governor Hochul was expressing from 2023, probably up until yesterday, when it was being said that this is a quote-unquote community, unquote, project, and the quote-unquote community wants this, that absolutely was an extrapolation of fantasy, because I've spoken to residents many times that live on Humboldt Parkway now and that formerly lived there. I've also spoken with their loved ones. And through a mini documentary that I did when I joined Eastside Parkways Coalition called In Our Own Words, I've got it on videotape of persons who lived, like I say, and formerly lived there and their relatives expressing the opposite of what the governor has said. And that's why in 2023, in the summer, there was such an outpouring of grief and anger, really outrage, I'll say it that way, over the insistence that it was a community project, because people who live closest to the expressway, Vicki, were expressing to Eastside Parkways Coalition and to the organization that I founded, Eastside Collaborative Partnership, they did not feel included in the process of deciding what kind of project was going to happen.
Right. I do remember. Actually, I remember very early on when there was some kind of a thing, and it was, put together by DOT, and it was poorly promoted. It was not well known what was happening. People went in and they didn't even really understand what was happening, the few people who came in. Now, I wanted, a lot of times I give you Greg, when we were doing the talking circle, I didn't ask you, and I see that you were ready. So do you have a value you want to share about Humboldt Parkway?
Yeah, I think it's a chance to right a wrong that happened quite some time ago, but boy, it just has been lingering for decades. So, but we've got to do it right.
Right. So the time is always right to do right.
Right.
As Reverend Dr. King said. Yeah. So, I usually say truth and love, and I will say that again. Truth and love. I think about the people we love and how we want to save them from this heinous, terrible health effects that are going on, which, people in the 98th percentile for early for dying earlier, and for I can't even remember. Asthma is the other big one. Yeah. So, but just all kinds of bad effects besides the separation, the noise, everything else. So the truth of the matter about what kind of research, what kind of community collaborating, or what kind of deal people thought they were making when they agreed to it in the first place. So truth is important here. The truth of the environmental impacts, et cetera, and also loving for the people. But the other one I want to mention is it makes me think of, especially when you mentioned the whole Olmsted Parkway system, and that Dostoevsky said, "Beauty will save the world." I mean, I don't think it'll do it on its own, but it's so important for us to give us the strength and the courage to go on, and it's part of that whole thing. So it's so important to have nature around us. I was just saying about the trees. They hold the ground down, so things are not eroding all the time, but they give us the very oxygen that we're breathing, everything, the coolness, the protection, everything about the Parkway system and the restoring of, people's just sanity, really. Just it's so refreshing and important to be in nature. And it was, we have the Parkway system, and so keeping that, when restoring that, is so important. So anyway, I know I'm preaching to the choir, because you two of all people and the whole group, there's been a lot of people working very hard on this. It's a long-standing issue. So why don't we just go around with, first of all, the whole situation, sort of how it unfolded, and then bringing people up to date. So in whatever way you want to, because we've got from the very beginning when they started it with anyway, I'll let you start with that, Brad, of how this came about, and then we'll get to where we are now. Brad?
Well, it's a 4-hour conversation.
I know, but we only have an
about.
hour. But just short circuit some pieces of it there.
There's many, many, many layers and nuances that we've been peeling back for the last few years.
Right.
As a bottom line, you talk about Olmsted. Buffalo has the first ever citywide park and parkway system in the history of the United States by the most famous landscape architect of all time.
Right.
That alone would warrant our level of advocacy.
Right.
And then you add in the health effects, just to put a little more focus on what you were saying before. Nationwide, it's a low life expectancy in the 95 to 100 percentile on either side of the expressway.
Right.
Asthma is also in the 95 to 100 percentile nationwide. And then DOT actually reported statewide that low life expectancy is in the 99th percentile statewide. So these are just statistics, and you can read through their, thousands of pages, and there's just another statistic. But what happened to us was, once we started meeting in the fall of 2023,
right.
Nobody knew each other. None of us knew each other.
Right.
And people started coming in and telling their stories, telling their family stories. And by the way, after Olmsted Parks came and gave their searing letter to us in August, we were meeting every week, and we never had less than 20 people at a meeting every single week for a year. We're now meeting twice a month, and we still only once have had less than 20 people. So there's a tremendous surge of there's an outpouring of interest to get this right, as Greg said.
Right.
But what was happening when people started meeting in the fall of 2023 is that people were telling their family stories, and we would have a room full of 20 to 25 people. Just everyone was just in tears over the stories we were hearing.
Right.
And that's really kind of, I think, heart and soul, and the power that keeps pushing us to say, there's only one choice here, and that choice is to fully restore the Parkway back to its original.
Right. You're so right.
And I can give you a little bit of the historic background of the Kensington Expressway. I spent about the last 3 years researching it extensively. When President Eisenhower was on his Cold War hysteric effort to ensure that if it were ever possible for America to be attacked here on our own shores, he was concerned that the Department of Defense, or the Department of War, whatever they were called back then, would be able to get people who live in and around cities out of those cities very, very quickly, but especially for the military to be able to move very quickly between cities. So he came up with this idea, his administration did, to build intrastate highways and an interstate highway system. And by the time that the decision was made, when Buffalo was being scouted, Olmsted had already been here. Olmsted had created not only Central Park, but Prospect Park in Brooklyn, New York. And the founding fathers of the city of Buffalo, well, Buffalo had been in existence for about 40 years by that time, commissioned he to come here and to build, as Brad said, the world's first system of interconnected park and parkways. And Humboldt Parkway, Vicki, was the absolute jewel, the crown jewel of Buffalo's interconnected public park and parkway system. In fact, the median of Humboldt Parkway, which is what was destroyed to make way for the Kensington Expressway or New York State Route 33, that was public park land. And the proof that it was public park land is how the residents who lived on the east side of Buffalo, and especially there in the Humboldt Parkway neighborhoods, from the Fruit Belt all the way up to the Delaware Park, how they used that median. That median was used as a picnic ground. That median was used for their barbecues and cookouts. It was used for studying. It was used people reading, artwork. It was used as a bridle path. Right there in the middle, there was a bridle path. It was possible. A lot of people don't know this unless they have very, very old memories that extend back that far. They used to be able to ride a horse from Delaware Park on Parkside Avenue and elsewhere all the way to what used to be Humboldt Park, but is now MLK Park, because there was a bridle path. MLK Park or Humboldt Park and Delaware Park were geographically, physically, and aesthetically connected, and that is what was destroyed to make way for Route 33. Now, we can fast forward all the way up until when Route 33 was absolutely a certainty going to be built. People were in an uproar. There was an outcry. It was like the system, the systematic marginalization and the disempowerment that happened to those residents who live on Humboldt Parkway was absolutely tragic, because what had also started to happen before the expressway was built, the neighborhoods began to gain color. People of color began wanting to live in the Humboldt Parkway community for the same reason that German residents and Jewish residents and Italian residents wanted to live there. The architecture of the homes was absolutely stunning and still is, even though there's a lot of love that's needed on that thoroughfare there. But the aesthetic beauty of that median, that public parkland median, people wanted to live in that neighborhood. Well, when Eisenhower decided the highway was going to be built there, and the residents who lived there, the white residents, the non-people of color residents, learned that. They were told that by their friends in politics to get out now, sell now. When they sold their homes, they sold it to people of color who did not know, were not told that the highway was going to be built. So here you had people who were influential, blacks, doctors, attorneys, teachers, that moved into not just the Hamlin Park neighborhood, but all of the Humboldt Parkway neighborhood, moved there, then all of a sudden lived there maybe 5, 10, some 3 years, then found out there's a highway that's going to be built, and that median that brought you here is going to be destroyed. Those people, they did try to fight the Department of Transportation. I don't know if any lawsuits were filed, which is why Eastside Parkways Coalition are absolutely the advocacy effort that Eastside Parkways Coalition and their community partner network have implemented is absolutely heroic, because we found unlike the Department of Transportation, who did not make absolute certain that people who lived in that community could have a say in what kind of project was going to happen, had a small group, relatively small group of select persons that they chose who were connected to politicians, who tried to decide for the whole city and county what kind of project was going to happen, but without involving the people who would be most directly impacted by it. I mean, the people who were in the advisory group who made the decision, many of they live in Hamlin Park, don't live right on Humboldt Parkway, but it's the people who live right on Humboldt Parkway who were left out of that process. Eastside Parkways Coalition found 60 plaintiffs, 60 residents that joined onto Eastside Parkway's lawsuits. So Eastside Parkway's lawsuit was not just in Eastside Parkway's Coalition's name. It was in the name of 60 plaintiffs also who, along with, in addition to Eastside Parkway's Coalition, New York Civil Liberties Union and Western New York Youth Climate Council and Citizens for Regional Transit, also and other organizations and groups, including Voice Buffalo, and Coalition for Economic Justice also are plaintiffs in that lawsuit. And the lawsuit that we did win that halted the project from being able to start is very, very, very important because, Vicki, the trauma that that expressway has caused. People have lost relatives to death. People have lost their health to sickness. People can tell stories who live there still, and even people who don't even live there anymore. We get emails and we get letters and we get calls, and people have joined our petitions who used to live on Humboldt Parkway, who grew up there, but whose families did move away, but their grandparents were ill, their grandparents died, or are still suffering to this day. So the trauma that expressway and the pollution factor, which is why the lawsuit was launched, to also fight the pollution being continued for another 75 to 100 years, which is what will happen if the tunnel project does happen. That tunnel will be there guaranteed for the next 70 years. And we have said to the Department of Transportation, enough is enough. These folks that you've displaced, of 10,000 persons were displaced when that expressway was built. 600 small businesses, 600 households, in the Fruit Belt neighborhood alone were destroyed. Over 200 businesses were shuttered. Jefferson Commercial Corridor was destroyed. Fillmore Commercial Corridor was destroyed. Downtown Buffalo's commercial corridor was destroyed. People don't know this. Intra-city highways destroy downtown commercial corridors. They don't make people come downtown. The only reason that expressway is even being talked about by some persons who utilize it now is because it's an on-ramp and off-ramp to get people through the East Side. They don't want to be part of building the East Side. They just want to use Humboldt Parkway as a fast, high-speed thoroughfare, despite the fact, some of they did not know that it is a toxic sewer. It is a vehicular sewer that is killing people, destroying people's health, damaged persons' property value, absolutely decimated the physical geography and aesthetic, and a world-class, it should be a UNESCO World Heritage Corridor, Humboldt Parkway should be. And the expressway, long story short, I know I tend to go on, and I apologize for that. As you can see, there's a tremendous amount of passion. There's a tremendous amount of rationale and reason for what Eastside Parkways did. We're not just people that have nothing else to do that just wanted to pick a fight with the Department of Transportation. We are people who are moved by the human interest story that is undertold and underexpressed by the project managers, and that is New York State Department of Transportation and, unfortunately, some persons who supported that agency in trying to spend $1 billion in an historically economically disadvantaged community. There's so much more that can be done with that money. Restoring Humboldt Parkway will not cost $1 billion. The money that would be left over could be used for so much good, and that's also what Eastside Parkways Coalition is trying to bring to the fore.
There's so much, and it's so persuasive, everything that you've said. And also everything that I've seen, both in the shows that we've done on this topic, where we had other members of your coalition, and former residents, Terry Robinson being one of them, and Marcia, who's an environmental engineer. So much that's so persuasive. And one of the things that always gets trotted out, they say, oh, well, we had all these people, and that's what they wanted. That's what they agreed to. Well, they were told, Stephanie Jeter being one of them, right? The people who were told this is the best you can do. You can at least, if you can get a covering over it, then, but that's very cosmetic and problematic in all kinds of ways, health ways and other ways, including one of the things that you said, the economics of it, both because people just go speeding through instead of actually patronizing and using different stores and facilities along the route along the alternate routes, and also the economics of the amount of money, the opportunity cost of that money to spend $1 billion on something that is going to require all kinds of upkeep, very much more upkeep. And one of the reasons they're in such a rush, and why we need to be in such a rush, because the upkeep that was supposed to be done, and I know Brad could speak about this, there was a lot more knowledge than I do, but I do know that the upkeep on the sides, the walls, is at an emergency state. So I just want to say one more word before I turn it over to you. Racism. Let us just not miss the fact that there is a lot of racism, because it was chosen that this is the community that, this would be the perfect spot. This would be the perfect spot. Why? Well, because as you just explained, exactly how whatever white people were there left, and the black people who were there are there suffering the cost still. Anyway, so Brad.
Well, that's a loaded word, of course.
Yeah, but it's a real word that even, I want to say, the network of religious community has been bragging on how the United Church Women United was calling it out for racism even at that time.
It was really Robert Moses that
right.
Pushed the racist agenda. With bridges in New York City that were too low to allow buses to come through, and really rammed the expressways within cities almost always right down through the heart of black neighborhoods. And it wasn't just black neighborhoods; it was always the very best street in the black neighborhood, like Claiborne Avenue in New Orleans. I want to pick up on before that you were mentioning the retaining walls.
Yes, please.
So the retaining walls, by DOT's own admission, cannot be repaired. This is tremendously significant because of the cost of actually fully removing the existing walls and rebuilding brand new walls, none of which you would have to do if you were to just, say, cut the walls down 8 feet, from the top, cut them down, dump them in the hall, and fill it in, and get a Bidwell Parkway back together.
Right.
So you can see the damage in the walls. It's down low. You can see the rusted rebar coming through. Rebar works in tension and concrete and compression, and the rebar that's at the bottom of the wall needs to be continuous in order for the entire wall to be able to resist the overturning forces.
Really?
So there's no way to re-weld those rods or anything like that, because actually rebar is too soft of an alloy to be able to take the type of welds that you would need to resist overturning forces of that magnitude. So that the two things that are, significant about that. Number one is that the $1 billion, it's not going for people. It's going to all be buried in the ground. And the second thing is that if we could just restore the Parkway, not only is it half the cost,
Right.
but or less. It's probably it's less time too, because you don't have to build a retaining wall. Vicky, it's crazy.
Just fill up a hole.
In
Yeah.
order to replace those walls, first you have to build a massive temporary retaining wall behind those walls. It's called a soldier pylon lagging wall, and this is right from DOT's own documents. You could look it up. It's I-beams pounded into the ground, and then wall panels slip down. And then they're going to dig down 20 more feet. Only then, after you install that, can you demolish the existing walls, which are loaded with asbestos.
So it's an even bigger mess.
Then can you actually build the massive retaining walls capable of carrying 3 foot of soil and 2 roadways and 50-foot trees. It's a tremendous boondoggle, and the payback it's not there, because if you put the cars back on the radials, it's worth billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars over the 100-year purported lifespan of the tunnel in economic development for the entire East Side. Not just for 12 blocks.
Right, because people will be coming down Genesee or, Sycamore or Broadway, et cetera. Fillmore and Jefferson.
Clinton and Seneca.
Clinton, yes, and Seneca. Absolutely.
William, yes.
Absolutely. Here, so one thing, we talked about doing this, so I want to say, if anyone wants to call in with a question, you can call in at 716-878-5104. 716-878-5104. So you're welcome to call in with a question. And I want to make sure that we also talk about, there is another meeting coming up. Sherry and I were just talking about it. So Sherry, you want to tell about that DOT meeting? Department of Transportation.
As a result of the court order that Eastside Parkways Coalition and other names was able to gain from New York State Supreme Court, a judge, I like the way he said it, he said no rational person should have been able to look at this proposal for this project,
right,
New York State Department of Transportation, and conclude that it would not be impactful to the persons who live in that section of the city.
Right.
So what has happened, there is an environmental impact statement variety of environmental study that NYSDOT now has to do, and it is a more comprehensive environmental review. As part of that, NYSDOT is convening what it is calling listening sessions, and these are going to be meetings that, although they should be taking place in the Humboldt Parkway neighborhood and on the east side of Buffalo exclusively, because those are the people most immediately impacted, anyone who lives within a mile of that expressway, they are going to be convened all over Erie County. Well, the next one, listening session number 2, it matters that they're going to be all over Erie County, because the further you get away from that expressway, the less direct impact the opinions will be shaped and formed by, which is probably why they're going to be all over Erie County. But anyway, listening session number 2 is going to be tomorrow, Tuesday, December 16th, from 5 to 7 p.m. in the Ed Saunders Community Center, which is at 2777 Bailey Avenue in Buffalo, New York, 14215. And if you don't know where the Ed Saunders Community Center is, it's right on the corner of Langfield Drive, Vicki.
Right there.
Well, I know you know where exactly.
I do know where. Yes, I do know. But anyway, I do know that it is ridiculous that they're not putting it closer to where the impacts are.
Exactly.
And also, the further away you get is the more people want to just, if they want to go downtown, they want to zip in there and zip back out, and that's diluted. All they care about.
The compassion is diluted the further you get away from the expressway.
Right. So that's the advantage that people might. And actually, this is I remember when you all did did some tabling at an event by the UU that was an environmental event too. Do you remember that? And at first, I think people were a little reluctant because it's like those are the people who really want the expressway because they live far enough away and they want to zip in if whatever they have to do in downtown. But actually, people were uniformly very positive because these are people who care about the environment, and it's bad for the environment. It's bad for other people if we care about other people. So it's about the health effects, and it's also what we said about the economics and the quality of life effects. When you talk, who wants to live in front of this canyon of hearing the cars go zipping by? That would make you crazy. You know, it's very it's a stress on the body. It's a stress on the body to hear that all day long when you're at home. And actually, I was just reading about Robert Coles and how he turned his house backwards so that, you know, the front, which would front onto that, was actually more like the back, so that he could front onto the back so that he didn't have to deal with the onslaught, that terrible psychological and physical onslaught that Parkway is. So we have an opportunity now. It's like you both said, this is our opportunity. And I want to say one more thing about how when they didn't do an environmental impact statement was not out of or were they irresponsible? Yes. Were they lazy? Yes. But were they really just trying to get something done that was they didn't care about?
Ding.
Yeah, they wanted to get it done. And don't bother me with the fact that it's bad for virtually everyone except for them who had the plan to do it.
And how many impact studies were done for the Peace Bridge project, 20 some odd years ago, whenever that was?
Right.
Over and over and over, and finally decided, hey, you know what? The impact there is not worth building a new bridge, so they should have done the same due diligence for Humboldt Parkway. Exactly.
And the due diligence wasn't done because, back to, say it again, they wanted to do it. So don't bother me with what's right or wrong or what the law requires or any of that.
Listen, we were able to, Eastside Parkways Coalition, I should say, had to foil meeting minutes from all the way back 2009, 2010 at even those very initial community advisory committee meetings. NYSDOT was told in plain English language, everyone spoke English there, that the expressway needs to be halted from killing us. Stop the road from killing us is what Stephanie Barber Jeter put in a letter and said verbatim to NYSDOT at those early meetings. What happened is NYSDOT pushed back. NYSDOT did not want to hear. I mean, you're talking about a municipality. What municipality wants to be held accountable for having built a public works project that sickened and caused persons to lose their health and even their very lives? What municipality would stand up and say, me, right here in New York State, guilty? Nobody wants to do that. So what New York State did was say, what we're going to do is pretend that we're sticking our heads in the sand. We're going to tell you, these folks, the only kind of project you can get done with that expressway that you're complaining about and that we have to maintain, and we're 20 years late from doing our due diligence and maintaining it, probably so it could get to the point that we only would have one type of project we'd be able to choose from, is to get a tunnel built there. And what we'll do to appease you, even though it really was a Band-Aid on a gaping, bleeding wound, we're going to put on top of that tunnel a fake park, a simulated park for about 3/4 of a mile we'll extend it to, and you just have to be satisfied with that. Did not address the pollution factor because even with the tunnel, the 900-foot plumes that are going to come out of both ends of that tunnel still contain even more concentrated levels of pollution, air pollution, and ambient air pollution inside persons' homes, black carbon soot all over their even exterior of their homes, and damaging their air and damaging their internal organs is still a factor.
Right.
So they didn't address the human element and the human health effect circumstance with the tunnel project. The tunnel is really, truly not just an insult. It's absolutely, to me, criminal. And I'll say that with a single open quote. That is my personal opinion. That's what got me interested. When I first heard that $1 billion was coming towards East Buffalo, Vicki, I did what a lot of people would do. I was ecstatic. I didn't even need to hear the governor with the fake story of it being a community incentivized project. All I heard was $1 billion being brought towards East Buffalo. Only when I began to listen to the human element in that story, which was under talked about, did I realize people have gotten sick because of pollution coming off the Kensington Expressway, and the city of Buffalo year in and year out wasn't screaming at the top of its lungs, and the county of Erie's health department wasn't yelling at the top of its lungs as an agency to the Western New York Department of Environmental Conservation and to the U.S. Department of Health and the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration and the New York State Department of Transportation, get that roadway out of there. It was never supposed to be there in the first place. We had an award-winning parkway that rivaled Bidwell Parkway, Lincoln Parkway, and Chapin Parkway in Humboldt Parkway, and Humboldt Parkway was larger than all three of those parkways. Why do people who happen to now be people of color, they used to be Caucasian, but they are now people of color, why do they not deserve to have the same beautiful, natural, healthy, great outdoors that people who live near Bidwell, Lincoln, and Chapin Parkway and McKinley Parkway have? Why don't they deserve that? Why? Is it the color of their skin? Environmental racism, by its very definition, it is a policy, it is an action, it is a practice that damages persons' lives predicated on their race, their ethnicity, whether it is an intended consequence or not. Well, New York State Department of Transportation and the state of New York and our governor and our elected officials who all backed the governor in claiming that it was a community project, even though they know that it was not. It was a community group project, not a community project, because our surveys have shown that overwhelmingly by a ratio of 8-1, East Side residents, including who live on Humboldt Parkway, and the pushback from Humboldt Parkway neighborhood is evident in the 60-plus plaintiffs that we have on our lawsuit. How many people who live on Humboldt Parkway were in that community advisory committee that said do the tunnel project? How many? If they had anywhere near 10, I think they would have bragged about it.
Those early meeting minutes were foiled by Morgan Baker,
yes,
of Eastside Parkways Coalition, and that kind of brings up a point for tomorrow for people going to the DOT meeting tomorrow. It's a sticky note session. That's how they're listening, by handing people sticky notes.
And the computers in the back of the room, don't forget.
They have there's other ways to communicate, but
the surveys on the computers in the back of the room.
Essentially, it's a voting by writing things. It's a voting by sticky notes,
which makes no sense.
And what we want to change at this moment in time, picking up on what Sherry was saying, is that in the EIS process, there's, as well as the EA that was struck down, there's a initial stage which is called the scoping stage, and it's a little flimsy here because DOT doesn't even call this yet the EIS process. It's some kind of gray area. Which we're trying to sort out, like what's up with that, where it's like a listening area pre-EIS, not even EIS scoping. But what we're asking people to do is to take this as a scoping phase, and on your sticky notes, write down that the main project objective should be to prioritize the health of the community with this project. In the past,
not vehicular capacity.
In the past, in the environmental assessment, it was vehicular capacity. I've actually tuned up that rap a little bit, Sherry, after meeting with Sam Radford. And the rap kind of goes like this: for that bullet point, in the project objectives, we demand that the DOT prioritize the health of the community and increase the capacity of the transportation network metro-wide by using transit as well.
Oh, wonderful. How wonderful. Well, this is about the good of the community. And I want to say, I want to echo what you said, Sherry, about criminal, because it is criminal. When people bypass the routine because they know that they won't pass that routine and they just want to get it done, that they're breaking the law, and they're doing it for a purpose, and for the purpose of environmental racism and getting it done what they wanted to get done. Mm-hmm. That is criminal behavior. And then going along with it, when you talk about that group that they keep saying, well, they were good with the tunnel. Well, they were good with the tunnel because they were told that was all they could get. So that's not good enough. And I want to say, Brad, when you have some of the things that because you've got that expertise to just show how ridiculous it is, the situation that we're in, the money they want to spend for this perpetuation of gigantic racial injustice that is just about saving 3 minutes off of your travel time or 5 minutes off of your travel time.
And you know
it's
what
heinous.
I thought of, Vicki, too? I thought of the future. I thought of trauma. I think of trauma.
Yes.
It should not be buried. The trauma that expressway, people had to leave their homes because of eminent domain. They were told, so what? You bought this house? Tough luck. Eminent domain. New York State says, get out of here. You're going to go live in public housing over here that we've built for you guys. 600 homes in the Fruit Belt neighborhood. Can you imagine not just being told to leave your home, but your home actually destroyed? Can you imagine your business being told, 100, 200 businesses? Can you imagine being told you got to leave your home and your business is going to be shuttered as well? Can you imagine staying on Jefferson or Fillmore and being run out of business because now the neighborhood is bifurcated. It's not possible to stand on one side of Woodlawn Avenue, on Humboldt Parkway at Woodlawn, and just walk across the grassy median to Jefferson Avenue to get to a store. Now people who think about it. Put yourselves in the position of the people who are most directly impacted. You're sitting there in your home and Humboldt Parkway, you cannot even sit on your porch. The pollution is so terrible. So many people have gotten sick. Inside your home, there's black carbon soot from the diesel fuel trucks that are, barreling up and down the expressway. Like Vicki said, 24/7 noise pollution. The beautiful thing about being human is that, we're a species of, in the animal kingdom, whatever, but we're human, but we adapt like animals do. We adapt to it. But imagine that. Imagine having to adapt to 24/7 noise pollution. Imagine not being able to have relatives come over, not having that beautiful grassy median like Bidwell and Lincoln and Chapin Parkway to walk on, not being able to go and play with your children, not being able to push your baby carriage down the street because the pollution is real. The types of pollution that people are getting sick from, believe me, people, this is not a witch story. This is not a ghost story. It's really, really true. The particulate matter pollution that people are sickened from, the 92nd to the 100th percentile for dementia and Alzheimer's and asthma and bronchitis and emphysema and lung cancer and upper respiratory ailments and sarcoidosis and leukemia and lupus. There are people who in their families 5, 6 people are either sick or have died because of that expressway. So when you hear Eastside Parkways Coalition, when you hear the dog whistle that I was hearing that got me involved, very, very emphatically, when I was hearing things like politicians saying things like, it's those people, the Johnny-come-lately, those people trying to tell black people what to do with our community. That's not who Eastside Parkways Coalition is. Eastside Parkways Coalition has people of color in it, has many people of color in it, but this is not about black and white. This is about life.
Right.
And a life matters. A life is valuable, whether that life belongs to a person who's Caucasian or that life belongs to a person who's, if you get sick, you get sick. And when your doctor looks at a sick patient, God help us if they see color. It matters. Please support the removal of the Kensington Expressway. Yes, we've lived with Route 33, but it was forced on a large number of and for generations now, 2-3 generations, these folks have being told, live with it. Now the state has $1 billion and can do something about it. Don't let New York State plow $1 billion into the pockets of contractors that don't even live in the community, don't even live in Buffalo. Many of them don't, come from all over the state. And does the state even have a requirement that you have to be a New York State contractor to work on the project? Can't they come from just anywhere in the world or anywhere in the country? That's how we have to be the conscience of our state. So let's start now by saying life matters. Life quality matters. When a wrong is done and a state has stood up and said, we did wrong 70 years ago, don't let that state redo the wrong all over again. Don't let them reinvest in the wrong. Say no.
Yes.
You admit that you did wrong. Take the expressway out and fix the wrong that you did. You can't bring anybody back from the dead, and you can't automatically restore anybody's health, but you can stop another generation of our children on the east side of Buffalo from looking at the state of New York as though we are not valued. We are not appreciated just because of the pigmentation that's in our skin, the melanin in our skin.
You know, I need to also add, you talked about trauma, and so the trauma of the past, and then there's this ongoing trauma that's been going on. It's ongoing, people getting sick, people having this horrendous, big, gaping road there. But the other thing I wanted to say is the trauma that people would experience about if they were to construct the ridiculous and boondoggle and continuing expense of the craziness of this tunnel project. Because, you know, when we've done this show on this before, Terry and Marcia, who have a house right there, and they talked very specifically about what that would be like. And I know you could go on that for a little while, too, if you would, Brad.
Well, it'll be horrible.
Yes.
The time period of the construction will not be pleasant for people living on Humboldt Parkway. The thing I would like to say, though, is the worst thing about the tunnel. There's two absolute kill factors. One is that, and some of this maybe
that should kill the project.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Okay.
Some of this your listeners might not know.
Mm-hmm.
The tunnel can't extend any farther north because Scajaquada Creek is buried under approximately at St. Francis de Sales, where the overpass is. It's called Scajaquada Drain. It's 25 feet wide and 14 feet high, reinforced concrete. The cost to do that would be exorbitant. So it can never be extended farther, like let's say up to Delaware Park. So the kill factor for that for the tunnel is that it cements in place that the expressway will always be there. So we're here we are, you know, so many years later, and we have the opportunity. We now know that this was a big mistake,
right.
And we're gonna spend all this money to cement it in place,
and for a tiny Band-Aid over the whole long thing
for 12 blocks,
right?
And all wrapped in the guise of reconnecting communities. And this is a whole nother topic, is how we have to overcome kind of misinformation, because under the guise of reconnecting communities, what they're actually doing is cementing in place that the entity that most disconnects the communities, that is the expressway, will remain essentially forever. It's it makes no sense. It should be the very last option. Hey, one more kill factor.
Yes,
it's a more minor kill factor in a way
go ahead.
To the project, but maybe people don't know this. Also, the replica parkway that they're going to put on top, the 12 blocks, has trees with, as we call them, horizontal roots, only 3 feet deep. But those trees are guaranteed to be cut down somewhere 30 to 100 years from now, because the tunnel is just a building. It has a rubber roof, and at some point you're going to need to replace that roof. So what you're doing is you're replicating what happened. Do you know the Courier Express photo of all the stumps? Is from March 3rd, 1960. We're guaranteeing, the DOT would guarantee that we would see that once again with the tunnel proposal.
Did you add that the maintenance on the tunnel is $12 million a year? Is it $6 million or $12 million?
It's $5.
$5 million?
And that's for
That's a lot of money.
No filtration. That's just with the cars blowing the exhaust out each end.
And that's the annual cost, but then there's the other maintenance cost when your restraining walls need to be replaced. That is going to happen also. So all of those, the trees and everything else, from what I understand, and not being, that all of those things have to be replaced in, say, is it 30 years? Is it 40 years? Is it 20 years? It'll be before long. It will be faced with all the same problems again.
It's just ludicrous I'm just waiting for the early community advisory committee to admit that they made a mistake, to admit that to express chagrin that they were told you are only going to get the kind of project that we dictate to you. I'm waiting for them to admit that, rather than be, digging their heels in and trying to cast, anyone as the bad guy for criticism, because what Eastside Parkways Coalition is doing is not only admirable, I think it is absolutely heroic, because, like I say, the entire political establishment lined up behind the governor when they should have lined up behind the community. Right.
They should have, and you still can. So we're just at that point where we need to start winding down the show. It's been a very lively show. It's very, very critical, very important. We have the opportunity now to right the wrong, as Greg put it so well. It's always the right time to do the right thing. So you can do the right thing by, first of all, going to the NYDOT listening session tomorrow, Tuesday the 16th, at what time is it?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. At the Ed Saunders Community Center there on Bailey. You're welcome to do that. You can also go to the Eastside Parkways Coalition website, ESP Coalition, is that right?
ESPcoalition.com.
Yep. So you can do that. We're also, we didn't get signed on to the lawsuit. I wish we had, but certainly the Western New York Peace Center is totally supportive, and we've been supporting, and we're totally on board of Restore Humboldt Parkway.
Can I play this MLK
We
quote?
will all. No, well, we're just at the point. No,
okay.
We're just gonna. But anyway, I think people should listen to MLK every time and try to do the right. At the time is always right to do right.
It's always right.
It's so good to have you both here on the show. Thank you both so much.
Thank
you, Greg. Thank you, Sherry and Brad. This is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace.
Wonderful.
In truth and love.